All right, welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of Dead Last, and we are kicking it off in the biggest way that I know how, and the longest way I could think of, and we are doing the films of John Carpenter. All of them. Well, all of them that we consider like genre, so like things that lean towards horror or sci-fi, that kind of stuff. And if you're new to the show, here's what we do. My patrons on Patreon all send me a list ranking the movies from number 1 being the best all the way down to the worst at Dead Last. And here are the patrons who participated in this one. We actually had a really good turnout for this episode. And then we take those rankings and we add up all of the scores, which gives us this definitive list, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm joined once again by some Carpenter loving film fans, including quite a few familiar faces. And first of all, I think we should start with the guy that constantly calls himself the Dead Last panelist, although he's certainly not dead last in our hearts, and it is Derek from HalloweenShindig.com and Shindig Radio, which when is a new episode coming?
I don't know, guys. Hopefully soon. I'm sitting on 2 that are already finished that I just haven't got around to editing. But I love John Carpenter. He's one of my favorite directors. He's one of my favorite composers. I like most of the movies on this list, and some of them are among my favorites of all time. So I got to do the John Carpenter Dead Last. I don't have time to edit my own show.
We also have coming back again. In a new setting with some spooky stuff happening behind him. It is Matt Mostrella. Welcome back, Matt.
Thanks, Josh. I ran out to a Spirit Halloween that just opened up and grabbed whatever I could and ran back to this hole. Thanks for having me back. Look, I know I'm just constantly, my giant head is constantly on your show, so I'd like to apologize to all your viewers. It's good to be back. I love John Carpenter. I love this panel. You guys are all great, and let's do this.
That's great. And I know we were joking about this before we started filming, but I want to know, is Michael Myers with a samurai sword canon, or is that fan fiction with fan fiction?
Oh, I mean, I think he'd have better luck if he used the katana. And apparently Riot Society agrees. So there you go.
And coming on again, you have seen him in our January Best of 2020 episode, and he was in the season finale. Dan is from the 4 Moo groups. He's coming on board. He's got the outfit. You're looking pretty cold. Are you in Antarctica?
Yeah, I just came in from outside. Sorry, guys.
Were you alone out there?
I think so.
Who were you with?
It wasn't Wilford Brimley.
Thank goodness. Alrighty, so before we get to the rankings, really quick though, if you guys at home watching this could just take 1 second, head down below, give this video a quick thumbs up and a like. It does help us out more than you know. We do appreciate it. And with that, let's get to ranking. I got 33 lists this time. That's actually a pretty big number. So that means that the best score a movie can have is 33 points, and the worst possible score a movie can have is 594 points. That's a lot of points. So let's see if anybody gets up close to that. Because at Dead Last, out of 18 movies, with 514 points comes Ghosts of Mars. That's right. Although, oddly enough, it was only ranked Dead Last 5 times. 5 times out of 33. So that's rather unusual. The highest ranking it got, though, was 11th place. It never ranked in the single digits. No one gave it single digits. Now, on this panel, we were all pretty unanimous in how much we did not really care for it. Derek, you gave it the lowest, 17th place, almost your dead last.
Almost.
Matt, both me and Matt were very, very close behind you with that because we both gave it 16th place. And Dan, a little bit higher with 15th place, but we all had this really in the tail end of things. But Derek, you've had this the lowest. So what in particular about Ghosts of Mars was not great?
I mean, I think the thing that bugs me most about Ghost of Mars is that it just feels like a mishmash of other better John Carpenter movies. It's kind of like Escape from New York. It's kind of like Assault on Precinct 13. You got elements of The Thing and Prince of Darkness in there. It's like he's kind of doing a greatest hits. Like, I don't really care what's going on here. Let's slap this together. I don't know, man. It's not a terrible movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't like these monsters. I don't like these ghost people on Mars. They look very weirdly like industrial goth 90s, and I don't like that. This score is terrible. I don't like the score to Ghost of Mars. It's watchable. It has fun moments. It's got some good action in it, but I mean, on this list, sorry.
Well, that's one thing I can always say, that if a movie does not have a good score, you can pretty much count on that Derek is out. So. Now, slightly more favorably though was Dan, who had it in 15th place. So Dan, you found some other little nuggets of goodness here.
Yeah, but I found 14 movies with more nuggets. It's not his best work. It's not his worst work, and really I could rank it a little lower or maybe just a touch higher. But once you get to like the top 12 for me, like I think this is nowhere near John Carpenter's top 12. I like some of the acting. I don't think you can go wrong on Natasha Henstridge. I think she did a really good job with what was written for her. Ice Cube just plays himself, which is weird. I think Jason Statham's character is very uncomfortable. But it is what it is, I guess, which is sort of an average action movie, which looks like garbage on this list.
I'll tell you, it's the most 90s movie ever. Really, it just screams 90s. But it is so much fun if you have some friends over and you have a couple beers to goof on this movie, because it really is just like they took a bunch of different stuff, like Derek was saying, threw it in a blender, and they were like, well, here you go. It's John Carpenter, I guess, in a sense, but like Derek said, the soundtrack is not John Carpenter-like. It's more like heavy metal kind of guitar riffy. It just doesn't work. It's just goofball. Like Dan said, Ice Cube is literally playing himself. He's not even trying. He's even skipping in some scenes with a gun. I mean, it's hilarious because it's so awful. But I recommend it, but you have to be drunk and you have to be surrounded with friends. And that's the only way you're going to like it.
And what's weird, though, too, is that one of the things I really like about Carpenter is Carpenter does tend to explore the themes of the things that he's discussing. And you actually have a chance here because you have what's essentially like a natives and settlers kind of storyline, where it's like an allegory for an Old West, like cowboys and Indians kind of a movie. It was very open for Carpenter to explore of, well, who's actually the bad guys in this scenario? Like, are these creatures actually villainous because they're fighting back against these people that are changing their atmosphere to something that they can't quite live in? And then they introduce this whole thing of, hey, if you kill one of the bodies with a ghost in it, that ghost is just going to jump into the person next to you, so you have to be very, very cautious. And then they don't do anything with that. Then they're just indiscriminately killing the people with the ghosts in it with no care. I almost would like to see this same concept, but just explored on the level of, say, something like They Live was explored, where you had these different themes that were then like delved into, and this didn't. All right, well then that brings us to number 17. With 503 points, still a very, very low score. And this was a very close contention for dead last, was The Ward, which was his final directed film, full-length feature film, and was ranked, get this, dead last 10 times, double the amount of times in dead last that Ghost of Mars was, but just overall didn't have as low of scores. Its highest ranking that it got was 10th place. It also never got single digits. And on the panel, Derek gave it the lowest. You gave it dead last. Matt gave it 17th place, so almost dead last. I gave it a little higher in 15th place. And Dan, you gave it the highest of the group with 13th place. So you had you found some stuff in here I think that the rest of us didn't. How did you feel about it?
So I feel like, again, it doesn't really feel like a Carpenter movie to me. I almost feel like it's Carpenter trying to do Shyamalan, and please don't do that, because he's his own thing, right? And I'm not sure why he felt like he needed to do this twist ending. Because all these movies that have these twists in them, they really so much depend on the success of that twist. And whatever the story he was telling before that, I honestly was surprised by the twist. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody else saw it coming. The surprise, again, if it doesn't work for you, you're going to hate that movie, I'm pretty sure. And I didn't hate it. But like I said about Ghosts of Mars, I could kind of shift that around between 13 and 16 because those movies kind of blend a little bit for me in terms of the positioning of the list. But if you rated it dead last, I wouldn't argue with you. If you rated it first, I would wonder if you'd seen any of these movies.
You had mentioned about like why he would do that in this movie, and I can tell you because I did read an interview that he did it for a paycheck. The actual blurb that I saw was that he really just wanted to come in, direct a movie as a job, and just go home. Which is why this one doesn't feel anything like the standard Carpenter movie. This has none of his trademarks, nothing. He did not write the script. He didn't even do a rewrite. He just wrote it as is. This was definitely a paycheck movie. And although I gave this 15th place, which was I think a little bit higher, but I actually used Derek's methodology with this list instead of what I normally do, because when I watched The Ward, I felt nothing. It's kind of a nothing movie. I didn't hate it. It's not good.
No, I don't have any problem with John coming in and taking a paycheck and just kind of churning out a movie. But when you come out of retirement for this, and it is the one movie on this list that feels completely disconnected from every other movie on the list. And we're talking about John Carpenter, right? Like this is generic. This is forgettable. This feels like a bunch of other movies that you've seen before. It's perfectly a product of the era. What is it, 2010? It's just a movie I don't want to watch. And if it doesn't have John Carpenter's name in, I'm not watching this movie at all. And he doesn't do the score. He's not writing it. It's like you say, he's just not involved in this movie. And it feels like it. What am I watching here? Am I watching a John Carpenter movie? And say what you want about the lesser films of his catalog and maybe some movies that your viewers don't particularly like from John Carpenter. They all feel more like a John Carpenter movie than this one does. And for me, that's it. That's dead last, no question. I don't even have to think about it.
I can't believe it's the same director that did Assault on Precinct 13. It's just, to me, this is like John Carpenter's High School Musical, right? It's like if they had him direct that movie, because it's just a bunch of young, beautiful people in an insane asylum. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's not like that in real life. It's a Blumhouse kind of vibe, yeah. which I also was like, oh, come on, man, you're better than this. But the paycheck thing, I didn't know. It makes total sense. I still love the man, and I hope he comes out and does something that blows everyone's minds before he decides to hang it up, because he cannot go out on this movie. That would be just a tragedy. But there is one good scene that I'm sure Josh hates because of his eye trauma phobia. And that's the only reason this gets a notch above is that scene. That actually got me. I was like, ooh, okay, well, I felt something, so I'll bump it up.
Well, that takes us up to the next item on our list at 16th place at 502 points, only 1 point above The Ward. This was very, very close. Actually, I believe, Matt, your list, I think, may have switched this around a little bit. But at 16th place is Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which was ranked dead last 7 times, which, again, that's more than Ghost of Mars was ranked dead last. And the highest ranking it got was also 10th place. This is the third movie in a row that never got a single-digit vote at all. On the panel, 2 of us gave it dead last. Me and Matt. We both gave it dead last. Slightly higher up on the list is Dan with 16th place and Derek in 15th place. So we all kind of didn't like it. But Matt, you gave it dead last. How you feel about Memoirs?
I gave it dead last because I don't think John Carpenter directed this movie. I think Chevy Chase directed this movie. I think Chevy Chase was like, listen, John, I know comedy. I'm gonna call the shots. And the timing is completely off. Like Chevy Chase requires timing. He's funny. I love Chevy Chase. But in this movie, it's just really hard to watch because none of the jokes land. And then there's scenes that just go nowhere, and you got all these amazing actors in it. You got Sam Neill coming in there, and I'm like, what are you doing with any of these people? Daryl Hannah, I love her too. And the obvious effort that was put into it, the special effects, this should have been great. And it's just so hard to get through. It really took everything I had to finish this movie.
But you would rather watch The Ward than this.
I would rather watch The Ward than Memoirs of an Invisible Man any day of the week.
See, well, because here's why. Because I also gave it dead last. The Ward does what it does, and it does it fine, right? It does it fine. It's a competent movie of its genre. It just does it in the boring way possible. Memoirs of an Invisible Man does everything in the wrong manner, and it's not enjoyable. And the main reason why for me is Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase is so miscast in this role. He cannot pull this character off in the slightest bit. The way that they marketed this movie may have also tripped it up too, because they played this up as like, oh, it's a wacky comedy with an invisible man, and it's not. It's like this dry, humorless movie with like occasional stabs at comedy. And then I don't need a narration from your actor explaining exactly what's a...
Nothing around me was right. I could see pieces of the office, jagged edges of the building.
Yeah, I know. We're looking at it. I know. We know. Shut up. And I agree with John Carpenter on this, because John Carpenter says that it is his least favorite movie that he's ever done, and he hates thinking about it. And so do I. So it's my dead last.
John Carpenter probably has 100 good and personal reasons why he doesn't like Memoirs of an Invisible Man, none of which revolve around me sitting there watching it and either enjoying it or not enjoying it. Listen, Memoirs of an Invisible Man is not a good movie. Memoirs of an Invisible Man does lots of things wrong, but on this list, there's just other movies that I would rather not watch than Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I watched this a lot as a kid. It was on HBO quite frequently when it came out. And I mean, I don't know. I have memories of enjoying this movie. And when I watch it, it's fine. It's like a throwaway 90s, we don't really know the 80s are over yet vibe going on, which I can deal with. I like Sam Neill. I like these special effects. It's kind of like a Universal remake in a way that talks about why being invisible kind of sucks. And it sort of does. But you're right. I have no sympathy for Chevy Chase. He's a jerk in this movie. He's not funny. You're not watching Fletch be invisible, which you kind of want, but it's not. Ole, you son of a bitch. Come on, that's a good line.
Ole, you son of a bitch.
I think you guys hit on the strengths of the movie right there. I think it is a pretty good special effects movie for 1992. And so you could almost watch it a little bit to get to those good scenes, but you can fast forward to them. And also Sam Neill. Boom. Now, Sam Neill can't take away from the fact that Chevy Chase is supposed to be, your main character. He's not sympathetic. I'm almost more interested in the Sam Neill character. Like, what if the movie was told from the perspective of that, and you get very little of this invisible guy? That might be an interesting way to retell the story. And this is also a 4-year gap between the previously filmed movie for John Carpenter and this movie. So I wonder what those 4 years were like. And they're like, it's almost like another paycheck movie, maybe. Again, not a good movie. I have it higher than a couple other ones, but if Chevy Chase is supposed to carry this movie, obviously he can.
All right, so that brings us to numero 15, which is a movie that I did not expect to see this low on the list, because with 473 points is John's first movie, Dark Star, which I'm surprised was all the way down to 15. It was ranked dead last 5 times. Ranked dead last as many times as Ghost of Mars. Think about that. And its highest ranking that it got was 9th place, so it's our first movie to get any single-digit votes. On the panel, Dan and Matt, you guys both gave it 14th place, a little bit lower on the spectrum, and Derek and I, we both gave it 13th place. So we were all around the same point with this one. But Matt, how did you feel about it?
You know, him just coming out of the gate with Dan O'Bannon. I mean, it is what it is. I love Dan O'Bannon, man. Return of the Living Dead. He wrote Alien. He's amazing. And him and Carpenter collaborating on it seemed like a student film. I'm sure they had some money, but I think it's ambitious. It's kind of fun in parts, especially when he's fighting that goofy balloon with Creature from the Black Lagoon feet. I really kind of enjoyed that whole sequence, and I could see where he got some alien inspiration out of that. Yeah, it's just kind of fun. I love the whole surfing. I love the song John Carpenter did. I love that song.
Sunshine down, but I see only one. When I think I'm over you, I find I've just begun.
I was like, did he write that? Oh man, that's great. So yeah, I mean, all in all, you're seeing this young director kind of like feel himself out a little bit and kind of, you know, into what he's going to eventually become. I really enjoyed it.
I'm with you because, I mean, I have it 13th place, which seems kind of low, but I do have to say that I really enjoy Dark Star. My biggest beef with Dark Star is that it was originally a short film that they ended up extending and adding additional scenes to and going back to shoot more things to make it into a longer film. But there's some things in here that are so undeniably enjoyable. The character interplay is just hilarious. The talking bomb is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and like that whole ending sequence is just pure genius. It's kind of making fun of 2001, but it's not like it's parodying it. It's kind of just riffing on it a little bit, and I love it. I mean, there's some stuff in this movie that I just genuinely love, and it's a very clear indication of what Carpenter would become. And I feel like if it didn't, I feel like I would have ranked it higher were it not padded out quite a bit. But I really enjoy it.
I actually love Dark Star. I have a lot of nostalgic love for Dark Star. This is a movie that my father really enjoyed a lot. And we had a bootleg VHS of Dark Star that he used to watch from time to time. And so this is probably the first John Carpenter movie I ever saw. I mean, unbeknownst to me at the time. But at the same time, I understand this is really amateurish. This is really low budget. It's really slow. It's got a real stoner 70s lackadaisical sort of vibe to it, which I can see a lot of people not really enjoying, especially audiences coming to it now or trying to put it into context. I love John and Dan Wyman's score for Dark Star. It is awesome. And I like the way it looks. You know, anti-2001 thing that's kind of going on here where they're like, space is boring. It's not exceptional to be an astronaut in outer space, and look at these guys who are just sick and bored of it. But it brings back memories for me. So I really love Dark Star, but I couldn't put it too much higher than I did just because of that, I think. But I love Dark Star, man. And if you're a John Carpenter fan, I don't know how you're not pulling something that you can love out of Dark Star.
I think there are some of his themes that really come across in some of his great movies. Because John Carpenter has this sense of anti-establishment in some of his better works to me. The guys in Dark Star, on the Dark Star, which is the name of the ship also, they're so disconnected from their initial orders that they almost don't even remember what they are anymore. And they're still kind of carrying out these planetary explosions. It kind of makes one think of the Vietnam War, which is going on at the time this was released. And it was filmed from 1970 to 74 underneath the comedy, which is solid. It's a funny movie. There's something happening here where he's talking about the military being out of control. I don't know if he's thinking about Vietnam when he wrote it, but in the cultural context, you know, when it came out, I can't not think of it that way. And being 14 on my list of John Carpenter movies, that just shows how much I love John Carpenter, because I love this movie. And, you know, not being in the top 10 of John Carpenter movies is no shame at all, because there are some heavy hitters coming up, guys.
which, yeah, interesting movie. Number 14 with 444 points. Myself, I'm a little sad it didn't get lower, is John Carpenter's Vampires. It was ranked dead last 4 times, and its highest ranking was 3rd place. It got 1 3rd place ranking in there. On this panel, some pretty unanimous scores, I guess. Dan, you actually had it in your dead last.
Terrible.
I had it in 17th. Derek, you had it a little higher in 16th, but Matt, you had it the highest with 13th place. But Dan, I gotta hear why this belongs in your dead last.
I think it's a terrible movie in every way. I think that they're awful vampire hunters. I think that first scene shows, while it's supposed to show that they're badasses who are prepared for every contingency, actually make me worry that they have no ability to fight vampires whatsoever, even though they have great equipment. Then they celebrate in that awful scene. You're like, none of these characters are guys I want to like. And that's something that persists throughout the movie. James Woods nails in this performance. This character is garbage. Daniel Baldwin, whatever. The story is okay, but it's definitely executed poorly. I'd have rather seen it again from the other perspective. Show me more about those vampires. I like the idea of a master vampire coming back from centuries ago, but we get nothing of those interesting vampires. Instead, we get these terrible vampire hunters whom I'd rather see die the whole way. It's just uncomfortable for me. Again, John Carpenter, where is John Carpenter here? What is he doing?
Matt, you gave it a higher than that, so obviously your feelings are different because you gave it 13th place, which I want to point out is where we gave Dark Star. So Vampires is your Dark Star.
Well, listen, I got to defend myself here, and I think Derek can back me up on this because we both have a love for Thomas Ian Grieve, who, of course, is Terry Silver in Karate Kid 3. It's one of my favorite actors. Plus, I love James Woods. He's another guilty pleasure for me. And he's hamming it up so much in this movie. I can't help but kind of love it. And the soundtrack is kind of fun too. Listen, with dialogue like, did you get any wood, Padre, when I slapped you around? You get a little mahogany? That's great, stupid dialogue. And I'm there for all of it. Yeah, the story's terrible.
It's not.
Is it?
It makes no sense. It makes no sense, that whole scene. No, I mean, it's such a weird, over the top movie that I don't know. I had to put it up higher just for Thomas Ian Griffith. I mean, bring Terry Silver back, baby. He's coming back.
This is not a good movie. I don't really like this, but I don't think it's as devoid of John Carpenter as some of the other films that I ranked lower, namely The Ward and perhaps Ghosts of Mars. Like Matt said, it's got like a John Carpenter. It's got like this twangy sort of Western score going on that makes it feel like you're watching a John Carpenter movie, at least a little bit. I think some of the photography is actually really solid in Vampires. I think Vampires looks cool. There's a lot of cool shots of this American sort of desert landscape. But when you get right down to it, as a Western vampire story, I'd rather watch Near Dark. I'd rather watch From Dusk Till Dawn. I think both of those movies are superior to John Carpenter's Vampires, which I don't think it coalesces into a movie that I enjoy watching. Not dead last, but bottom of the list, definitely for me. You can't stack up Vampires against some of the better movies on this list. Get real.
Every single character in this movie, every one of them is unlikable. They're all unlikable. I mean, I actually think that Rob Zombie learned screenwriting from watching John Carpenter's Vampires. It's like, oh, that's how people talk? Sure. Oh. And then here's the thing. John Carpenter's main characters are usually guys that are supposed to be unlikable. But he ends up casting these guys that are charming and likable, and it doesn't matter that they do jerky things. You like them anyhow because they're charming guys. James Woods does not even remotely have that ability. There's not a likable bone in his body. He doesn't come off charming. He doesn't come off pleasant. I don't want to be around him, like him. I don't want to root for him. And he seems to show a very unusual interest in the state of other men's erections.
A fun drinking game, though, is every time they say Padre, take a shot.
Oh,
You'll be dead within the first 45
Don't kill my
minutes.
audience. Don't kill my audience. Don't listen to Matt. Don't listen to Matt.
And that's Laura Palmer.
Yeah.
Cheryl Lee. And I think she actually does a pretty good job in this movie, given very little to work with. I mean, she doesn't have much dialogue. There's not much for her to do, but I mean, a testament to either her or Carpenter here that she does give a pretty good performance with very little to work with.
She does. Dead last. Still dead last.
You know,
No.
But she's fine.
If anybody puts this at dead last, I have no qualms with that. I do not like John Carpenter's vampires. Put it at dead last. There's probably about 3 or 4 movies that I won't argue with if you put them at dead last, and this is definitely one of them. So,
all right, moving on from that one. I feel like that one was pretty passionate. Moving on to lucky number 13. This is an interesting one. At 434 points, Village of the Damned. It's an interesting movie. The first movie on the ranking so far to not get ranked as dead last. It was ranked in 17th place, though, 3 times. It was 17th, and the highest score that it got was 6th place. On the panel, Matt, you had it the lowest at 15th place. Me and Derek both had it slightly higher in 14th place. And Dan, you had it the highest. You actually had it in 10th place, which was a pretty solid score. So I want to hear your defense of Village of the Damned.
I do like Village of the Damned very much, and more than the movies we talked about so far, because I think it has a lot going for it. Is the execution always the best in terms of the story? No, it's not. Are the special effects the best? No, they're not. There are some good actors in this movie, and I think they mostly do a pretty good job. It does have a sort of a weird feel to it. To me, when you like, the town is a bit weirdly isolated, but I think that plays into the story, so that's kind of a good thing. But I do enjoy it. I think Christopher Reeve is solid. I like seeing Luke Skywalker in a movie. That's interesting. And Kirstie Alley plays a great part, because I was only familiar with her, really from Cheers and that character, and this is something totally different. Again, there's that anti-government aspect happening, but she's trying to sort of help a little bit, even though it's outside of her role to help them. Would I watch it again and again? Probably not, but, number 10. All right.
It definitely ranks lower because I feel as if Carpenter has proved that he can actually do remakes the proper way, and he can do adaptations in a proper way, which is he takes the source material and he puts his own flavor into it to the point that it actually feels enough like the original and also like his thing at the same time. He does that very, very well. But in this movie, the fusion just didn't really feel there, and it came off as a little... It feels very TV movie of the week to me. But you did have... I thought Christopher Reeves was great in it. I loved that brick wall scene at the ending and watching Chris Reeves act the hell out of his head exploding, essentially. Mark Hamill was great in it. I thought that was all well and good. There was some decent stuff in here, but just not really enough of it to kind of be memorable to me.
Pretty spot on when you're like, this is a serviceable enough film, and it does feel like the kind of thing where the studio was planning on remaking Village of the Damned. Hey, who can we get to do it? Hey, why not John Carpenter? Right? He remade the thing. He's adapted books before. Let's get John Carpenter in here, and I think he does a fine job with the material. But when you start stacking it up against other John Carpenter movies, yeah, I don't think it stands up to even some of his lesser movies that feel much more like John Carpenter doing the projects that he's passionate about, as opposed to maybe just being a studio hired gun here, which I think he does a fine job with. And I think you can definitely watch Village of the Damned and not be, upset about it. Yeah. It's hard to watch Christopher Reeves not be Superman, right? Like,
yes, always.
I don't think of any actor feels more like a specific character in the entirety of filmdom other than Christopher Reeves is Superman. Like, and I can't see him in anything else without being like, hey, what's Superman doing? It makes watching anything with him a little tricky, I think.
I agree with what you've all said, and Derek especially, with I think this should have been Superman 4. Like, fight a group of children, punch them through walls. This is what I want to see. it's so blah. And to me, it all boils down to the threat. Do I really feel threatened by this menace? And in this movie, not really. I'm sorry. I mean, there's some cool scenes. I like kind of what they do with it, but the original Village of the Damned, like Derek was saying, is so creepy. There's something unsettling about it. This movie loses that 100%. These kids do not feel creepy. I mean, they're acting the hell out of it. They're trying. It's not on them, but it's just a huge misfire for me. It could have been something really, really special, I think, if John Carpenter really paid attention to, the source material and really tried to make it creepy. And I just feel bad for Christopher Reeve because he really is a phenomenal actor. But Derek's right. You look at him and you're like, it's freaking Superman teaching school. What's he going to do? You cannot separate the two.
All right, now comes to number 12, which I think is going to be somewhat controversial because of what I'm going to say about it. But with 421 points, you've got to Run, Baby Run, Escape from L.A. That's right. Snake is back, and he was ranked dead last twice. This movie got 2 dead last rankings. Its highest ranking that it got was 6th place. On the panel, Dan, you gave it the lowest ranking with 17th place. Derek and Matt higher up with 12th place. And I gave it 10th place. And I am going to defend it because I love Escape from L.A. And
I'm here for it. I'm ready for this.
Let me explain why. Because John Carpenter didn't really have much interest in making a sequel because he doesn't like to make sequels. He didn't want to make a sequel to Escape from New York. Kurt Russell convinced him to because Kurt Russell loves Snake Plissken so much. Kurt Russell was just like, when are we going to make more Snake? And John was like, all right. And John Carpenter basically said, this is my take. He said, I'm going to make the same movie, but I'm going to make it the Hollywood way, since it's in LA, and everything is going to be over the top and garish and plasticized and fake and silly. It gets a lot of criticism for that big CGI tidal wave, but I think that's the point, is it looks ridiculous because it's Hollywood, LA. It's all of the criticism of like 90s horror, like CGI and silliness and over-the-topness. I mean, it's clearly tongue-in-cheek, and I think that it works on that level. Is everything in Escape from LA is Escape from New York, heightened to the level of parody. Plus, it has one of the greatest movie endings of all time. That ending is hands down phenomenal and fantastic, and I love it. Don't care what you think. Love it.
Everything you said makes sense to me. It doesn't really change my perspective, though, because, as I said, vampires is one thing. That's like in another room. But I still feel like this is a movie that I like to a certain extent. I love Kurt Russell. I have the DVD cover for Escape from LA right here. So it's I do like it, but then you have to put it on this list, right? How am I going to work that out? And, it becomes difficult for me because I did rework my list quite a few times. But at the end of the day, I don't see the tidal wave as part of the parody. I do see it as part of a bad special effect. But the rest of the movie has pretty good effects, honestly. And, I do love Kurt Russell. I love the character of Snake Plissken a lot. And I love the ending. And I'm still putting it at 17. And it's really just because it's a John Carpenter list. And I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I guess I like 16 other movies in the list just a little bit better, or at least a little bit better. And I don't disabuse you of your number 10. Yeah, put this at 10. That's cool.
I thought I was going to be the guy who had to come on here and defend Escape from LA. So I'm glad you took the reins on that one as the show's host to defend Escape from LA, because I love Escape from LA. I love Snake Plissken. I love Snake Plissken so much that I will endure Escape from LA just to see Kurt Russell play Snake Plissken. I didn't know that about that Kurt Russell convinced him to do that. That makes me like it even more now somehow. This is not one of John Carpenter's better movies, but damn it, do I love Escape from LA. It's so ridiculous. You got Bruce Campbell, Steve Buscemi. You've got Peter Fonda riding a goofball tidal wave. Some of the worst CG when he's in that torpedo thing flying back. He plays basketball. He hang glides into Disney World. Like, this movie is ridiculous, and I love it for it.
I don't even know what to add to that because all of you covered everything I was just about to say.
We need to start letting Matt go first, I think.
No, I'm done. I mean, listen, you got Peter Fonda playing himself. You got Bruce Campbell, and if Kurt Russell wants to play Snake Plissken again, let him do it. I'm here for it. I love that character. I think he's great as that character. It's fun to watch. It's goofy as hell. It's a good time. There's really nothing else you guys covered it perfectly.
Pam Grier. I forgot to say Pam Grier as well.
Oh, Pam Grier. I got it. There it is. See, Pam Grier. Thank you, Derek.
Taking us up to number 11. 11 was an interesting movie because this was one of the more diverse rankings of where it showed up in quite a few places, but with 320 points getting a lot lower now. 320 points is Starman, which was never ranked dead last, but it was ranked 17th twice. But its highest place was number 1. It did get a number 1 spot on this list, which was pretty cool. On the panel, Derek, you had it the lowest, which was 11th place, which, again, I don't think is that low on this list. I had it at 8th place. Dan, you had it in 6th place, but Matt, you had it in 4th place. And yeah, I'm gonna take what Derek said on that last question. I'm gonna let Matt go first. Matt.
Well, listen, I've never seen it before, and I watched it for this because I'm like John Carpenter doing science fiction, a love story thing. I'm whatever. But I watched it, and this movie is beautiful. It's got heart. It's got a great love story to it. You got Bridges just acting the hell out of this, and it's the only John Carpenter movie that was nominated for an Academy Award, and it was Bridges' performance. It just really caught me off guard. Like, I wasn't sure if John Carpenter could carry this kind of film. It's really not his wheelhouse, and that's probably why I never watched it. But I'm regretting that because, instant classic as far as I'm concerned. I absolutely love the script. I love the way it's shot. It's very Spielberg, and it just, you could see that Carpenter is so diverse. He's just an amazing director. And this movie just sealed it for me. Just phenomenal. I love this movie.
I just love that movie. Honestly, I remember watching it with my mother when it was on HBO in the 80s because that, was a movie she wanted to see. And I guess this is a compliment of a movie. I only watched it a second time recently for the list, but I remembered so much of this movie, and fondly, because even though I was a kid where I wouldn't have watched that movie without my mom's wanting to watch it, I think it's great. I thought it was great when I was a kid, even though it doesn't really have stuff for a kid in it. It just has these great beats in it. It's a really well paced story. I just love it. I could have put it higher on the list a little bit maybe. But I feel like, again, among John Carpenter's movies, to be number 6 just means, it's a very good movie to me.
The funny thing is in my rewatch, I watched this back to back with Memoirs of an Invisible Man, and that actually brought me more disdain for Memoirs because this is the movie that proved that John Carpenter could take something that's not his normal genre and still make it feel like his. And that's the interesting thing to me, is because this is a very different kind of a movie for John Carpenter, but I still think it feels very much like one of his movies. It has a lot of his signatures, it has a lot of his atmosphere, it feels very Carpenter. And I think that showed what his talent was when you kind of just let him do his thing. It's one of the few John Carpenter male lead characters that's not kind of supposed to be an abrasive jerk. Like, he's actually a very caring, kind creature, and I love it very much. So much that I even enjoy the TV show that they made following up on it. There was, I think, 1 or 2 seasons of that, and it was not good.
I was worried that I was going to have to come on here and sort of defend Starman because I thought it would probably be in this sort of a position, and I thought that I was giving it sort of like a much higher rating than I imagined other people would give it. Meanwhile, I'm the lowest dude on this panel. I love Starman. Jeff Bridges is fantastic in this movie. It is an example of John Carpenter being able to just step in and do something that you don't expect John Carpenter to do, and knocking it out of the park. Starman is fantastic. I had it higher initially, and then as I thought about the movies and things, I just kept like putting stuff above it because I was like, but it's Starman, and I kept dropping it lower until I got to 11th, and I was like, I can live with it being there, but I'll probably have to defend that. And no, I have to defend putting it so low, which is kind of surprising to me. I do not begrudge the three of you for putting it as high as you did. I wished I had that bravery to put it as high as you guys did on this list, because I do love Starman. Watch Starman if you've never seen Starman. It's great.
Well, that brings us to our number 10 film, and it is pretty much all gold from here to number 1, all straight up gold. As we get to number 10, with 284 points, still getting much, much lower here, is the film that I guess I'll simply refer to as POD. I guess I won't say the name unless they want to slam me with a copyright. But you know, that one with the green tube of stuff in it. Anyhow, the lowest score that it got was 17th place. Never ranked dead last, but somebody did give it at 17th. The highest that it got was 2nd place, so it did get quite a wide range. This one was either loved or hated. It pretty much got all of the spots in there. On the panel, Matt, you had this the lowest out of us at 11th place. Derek a little higher with 8th. I gave it 7th, and Dan, you gave it the highest in 3rd place.
I could have put it number 2, to be honest with you, and I struggled a little bit with my 2 and 3. Prince of Darkness I didn't discover until maybe 10 years ago. To me, it is really a great horror movie because it's a little bit scary. Like, I'm unsettled by that video dream that's sort of coming to them. I mean, some of the stuff in it, yeah. I mean, could the effects be a bit better? Definitely. Is the scene where the guy's trapped in a closet for seemingly hours? I don't know. Yeah, there's a couple things I would probably tweak a little bit to improve for me, but generally, I love it. And I don't have to improve those things because I love the rest of it so much. Alice Cooper, plus 1 point for that. And yeah, I mean, give me that movie any day.
Listen, it's very cerebral. It's got so many awesome things going for it. I mean, it's blending religion and science. It's really, really ambitious. And even though the budget wasn't that high, it's genuinely creepy. It feels like you're honestly in that building with those people. Like you're in an extended sleepover with them. And then, of course, you got like a lot of people coming back from other movies, and it's kind of like you're just hanging out with friends. And I really do like this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Listen, I could listen to Egg Shen talk about quantum physics for an hour and a half, and I wish that Prince of Darkness was just that. But unfortunately, we have a story to tell here, so we're going to get along with it. No, I think this is a really underrated John Carpenter film just in its entirety. I'm glad that Dan has it at number 3. I was wondering if anybody was going to put it a little bit higher than this. I struggle with it because it isn't one of his finer pictures, but I do love this movie, and I appreciate it a lot. That dream, like Dan is saying, is really unsettling. Alice Cooper, who appears in the movie as one of those hobos with his little bike seat gag that he actually used on stage. I love this movie. I'm sad that this movie is in the second half of this two-parter. I think it should be ranked much higher, and I'm sad to hear that it wasn't.
Yeah, I am also kind of bummed out that it's this low, but I kind of get it, because I do know that this is a polarizing film, because I definitely think because of the subject matter, it's not really for everybody. There's some weird stuff in here that I get that people aren't into, but I'm super into it. I love it. Well, and I think the thing with that dream sequence is that it's like, it seemed kind of real. It had static in it and everything, and it just looked and felt like something that was real, and it's really unsettling, and it was at the time. And I loved all the different twists and turns that this took with all of the theological stuff and the science stuff. And obviously, I have a little. I might actually amend my ranking on this to be a little bit lower now that I know that the production studio behind it are such dicks. So don't copyright slam this video, damn it. All right, so that is the top half of the list. And for this kickoff episode of the second season, it's a two-parter. So that is the ending of the first part of this list. So we're going to adjourn, and we're going to take a short break, and we're going to be back in a few days with the top half of this list. So we'll see you then.
And I've been left alone now with you, the viewers. Probably not, because this was all edited out of Josh's two-part season premiere. John Carpenter, Dead Last. Feels good to be a part of this. A little disappointed. We just came off of finding out Prince of Darkness, or the film that cannot be named. Finding out that didn't make it into the top half of the list. That's unfortunate. I mean, something in the top half of the list is something I didn't have in the top half of the list. But I can't think. There's too many movies. I can't think of which one. Which one bridged the gap that I didn't want to? Maybe even two. I don't know. It's hard to remember all of the films and where I put them. Maybe I should break with everybody else, because once the time comes where I need to take a break, I'm not going to be able to, because we'll be in the middle of recording still. Yeah, let me take a break too.